Hi, it's me. Welcome to a brand new ID overview for Limbus Company Season 6. Today's update has added a new ID in the Lord of Hongyuan Honglu. This is the flagship ID of the season, and as a result they've stuffed him to the brim with new mechanics to keep in mind. He's a combination of poise and rupture, but in all honesty, those two things only matter if you plan to take him with Heishou IDs. This is going to be a weird one to talk about, so let's get right into it before we get off track. A lot of this ID revolves around how many Heishou units you bring along with him into an encounter. Before you even begin a fight, this ID begins with a certain amount of leash holder of all Heishou determined by the number of Heishou IDs that are equipped in your team, regardless of if they're in an active slot or a backup slot. This effect gives 1 max speed and 1% more damage per stack, maxing out at 5, 1 min speed and 1 defense level up for every 2 stack, up to 5, and 1 offense level up for every 3 stack, up to 3. As of now, you can fully realize the first conditional, but neither of the other two. Oh, and if you have at least 5 Heishou, then Honglu gains 1 damage up, and all Heishou allies gain 1 offense level up every turn. On top of that, when a Heishou ally is defeated, Honglu will heal 20 SP and gain 1 life from death, an effect that stacks up to 5. This is an effect that gives 1 offense level up per stack, 1 damage up for every 2 stacks, and 1 attack power up if you have at least 3. It's a very powerful effect, but as your goal is to not let your allies die, you probably won't be focused on building it up. The last part of his non-field passive is that every time a unit substitutes in, that unit heals 10 SP and will use their skill 1 as an unopposed attack against a random enemy. This is a free Sin resource as well as an attack that will always land, which is very powerful. However, if the ally is from the E.G.O family or is a Heishou, they will instead heal 20 SP and automatically use their skill 3, which is obviously insanely powerful. All the Heishous gain their important status effect from using that skill, so while it can never be used in its empowered state from this, it does jumpstart their effects. Notably, this effect can happen 2 times per identity, so you can't infinitely spam said skill by making those IDs retreat using E.G.O Family Ishmael's support passive or this character's defense skill. That's right, I'm gonna go a bit out of order here and talk about his defense skill next. Heishou Keen Claw is a 6-13 rolling /gluttony clashable counter with single unbreakable coin. It applies 1 slash power up to Heishou IDs based on your highest resonance, usually gluttony, and then picks 1 Heishou ally with the least HP if there are any. If there are any backup units, it will trigger Your Will Guides My Blade. Don't get too confused, this is just assist attack, and it will make that Heishou ally use their skill 1 against the target of the counter. It will then force the selected Heishou ally to retreat with Battlefield Retreat at turn end, healing 10% of their HP in the process. If there aren't any backup units, it will just give the Heishou ally to attack power up instead, which is still pretty powerful overall. There is genuine strategy in repeatedly making your Heishou allies retreat in order to get free skill 3 uses every turn. Plus, since Heishou allies heal 20 SP upon returning to the fight, it's also not a bad way to build up SP early on for a couple of units. That said, since it's always the ally with the least HP percentage, it is hard to control which Heishou retreats unless you only bring 2 of them into the encounter, which will make you miss out on the Heishou leash effect. There is a balancing act to be done here if you intend to use this as your primary strategy for the fight. Now on to his actual passive. You might notice that I am not including most of it in the small box that I usually put the passive in. This is because I literally cannot fit it into that space. Anyways, looking at the less important part first, this unit will not die the first time they hit 0 HP if the passive is fueled. Instead, he stays alive until at least turn end and gains 1 Tarnished Blood, an effect that will kill him at the end of the next turn if he doesn't end up healing, and also increases his damage by 3% per stack. You're intended to use Tears of the Tarnished Blood on the next turn in order to activate the E.G.O, because instead of killing this ID the first time you activate the attack of the E.G.O, it will instead heal him for 60% of his max HP and permanently grant 1 damage up. I'm not really big on this, mostly because it feels like it's just trying to make the E.G.O, which is already pretty solid, usable without its downside, instead of actually trying to leverage that downside in a way that's actually interesting. The more interesting part of his passive is called Lord's Guard. Despite this being a passive that activates on resources owned, this effect applies to other Heishou allies based on your highest resonance, up to 2 allies per turn, and notably it does not apply to allies who have assist defense. Lord's Guard is an effect that is literally just assist defense. It counts as assist defense for the purposes of taking an attack, but unlike assist defense, it can only activate when Lord of Hongyuan Honglu is the unit taking the one-sided attack. The Lord's Guard skill itself is also weaker than the one that Heishou Faust activates from assist defense. It's a 2 to 10 rolling Gluttony Clashable Guard with a single unbreakable coin. It does gain 1 clash power if the target has 3 or more negative effects though. This will most certainly result in a lost clash for whomever decides to activate their Lord's Guard effect, so it's more likely to be used as a way to keep Honglu alive since this ID is actually surprisingly frail. It doesn't necessarily help that a lot of the Heishou IDs are also pretty frail, and the only one who isn't, that being Faust, is also the only one who can't use this skill since it will use her built-in assist defense skill instead. And lastly, his support passive increases damage for one ally with the least HP percentage by 3% for every different type of death right on the target. Frankly, this effect only matters in teams who have a lot of Heishou IDs, and you can only get it up to 9% at the time of this ID's release, despite it having a max of 15%. Let's just call it future-proofing and move on for now. I Wish to Open the Path is a 4 to 12 rolling slash gloom skill with 2 coins that can become a 4 to 14 based on his own poise and target's rupture, plus it gains 1 clash power if the target has a variety of negative effects. It gains a good amount of poise count and is rupture count neutral, which is nice, but more importantly it applies 1 defense level up to 3 other allies, prioritizing allies with assist defense or Lord's Guard to make those clashes better should they activate. It also has the side effect of making the clashable defense skills of the Heishous better at clashing, so activating their special status effect is less likely to get them damaged should they be gaining it from their defense skill instead of their skill 3. Tarnished Blood's Absolute Cleaver of Ambitions is a 3 to 15 rolling slash gluttony skill with 4 coins, the third and fourth being unbreakable, that can become a 3 to 23 based on his own poise and the target's rupture. It's a fairly normal skill save for the unbreakables and the fact that the fourth coin just deals 50% extra damage from no conditional. While the effect amounts are strictly negative, it also increases the gluttony damage of all allies by 10% for the turn it's being used. This is going to be a great boon for any rupture team or just any team with a lot of gluttony skills. It also does a lot of damage on its own just in general, especially if that last hit crits. Answer Me Heishou Pax is a 10 to 22 rolling slash pride skill with a single unbreakable coin that can become up to a 10 to 25 based on poise on self and rupture on target. It's his best way to get poise potency. And yeah, this ID is not great at maintaining his own poise or the target's rupture. It inflicts offense level down for every 2 unique negative effects on target, and defense level down by every type of unique death right, up to 3 of each. More importantly, this skill is another one that synergizes with the Heishous. After using it, it will pick one allied Heishou who has the least Unrelenting Storm and have them activate Exalted Command, a version of assist attack that has that unit use their skill 3, and also give them 1 Unrelenting Storm. In the case of Heishou Faust, it will never activate her empowered skill 3, but otherwise this is insanely powerful for obvious reasons. If multiple Heishous have the same amount of Unrelenting Storm, it picks whichever one is highest in the deployment order. Unrelenting Storm is just an effect that stacks up to 2 and gives both 1 offense level up and 1 defense level up for every stack every turn. It's nice, but the least important part of this skill other than how it activates the Exalted Command. After Exalted Command ends, Honglu will then activate I Carve the Path of a Lord as an unopposed attack against the same target, or another random one if the original or second target was killed. It's a 6 to 14 rolling slash pride skill with 2 coins that becomes up to a 7 to 27 based on his poise and the target's rupture, and if the Exalted Command user was a Heishou Adept, which is only Faust at the moment. It has a lot of damage conditionals on top of inflicting slash resist down next turn. The difference between slash resist down and slash fragility is that resist down is better for enemies who resist slash damage, whereas fragility is better if the target is already weak to the effect. If the second coin kills, it heals 10 SP and applies 1 attack power up next turn to 2 Heishou allies with the least current SP, and it then also grants the Heishou Bolus Contamination effect of whichever ally activated Exalted Command. Heishou Bolus Contamination can only be gained once per ally that activates Exalted Command, and grants permanent effects based on what allies have activated Exalted Command. Heishou Mao Adept Faust makes Honglu take 5% less damage from attacks. Heishou Mao Ryoshu makes Honglu deal 5% more damage if the target is slower than him. Heishou Mao Otis lets Honglu inflict 1 rupture count on hitting an enemy with an unopposed attack once per turn. Heishou Si Rodian lets Honglu inflict 1 rupture potency on critical hit up to 3 times per turn. And Heishou Si Gregor gives Honglu 1 poise count when he deals rupture damage once per turn. In addition to whatever effect the ally gives him, each stack of Heishou Bolus Contamination also gives a 5% damage bonus through his passive. This effect can stack up to 11, but those are the only 5 effects available right now. If I had to say which ones were best, they are from Otis and Gregor, since they are the only ones that actually improve the consistency of this ID, so it's probably better to have those 2 deployed earliest in a Heishou-focused team. So what about if there are no Heishou allies to activate Exalted Command with? Honglu will instead immediately use Lonesome Stand Sacrifice to claim the Garden, a 6-18 rolling / pride skill with 3 coins that can become a 6-27 based on his own poise and the target's rupture. It has more damage conditionals than the combo skill, this time including life from death as a requirement, and the only other major differences are not inflicting any rupture count, and the on-kill effect of the final coin simply giving Honglu to attack power up next turn instead. It deals far more damage than the combo, but it ends up being less damage overall due to not having an entire skill 3 mashed in between it and Honglu's original skill 3. While I would love to linger on the damage potential of his skills, it's pretty easy to see how much damage they can deal. Instead, let's talk about E.G.O. He's very obviously supposed to synergize with Tears of the Tarnished Blood, as he has a bunch of effects that literally come from using that E.G.O specifically. I'm not really big on an ID having specific interactions with specific E.G.O. We've only had it twice before with varying effectiveness, and this one feels like it remains in the varying style of effectiveness. He also perfectly feels his own Dimension Shredder. This is his best way of inflicting rupture count, though the rest of its effects outside of the Fragile don't really synergize with him at all since they relate to charge. And frankly, his E.G.O matter a lot less than his ability to pair up with the other Heishou IDs in order to amplify them and himself. So if you don't have a particular E.G.O for this ID, you shouldn't focus on getting E.G.O for him over getting IDs that pair well with him. As said before, the most important Heishou to pair with this ID are Otis and Gregor, since they're the only ones that actually make him more consistent. Rupture count and poise count are very important for this ID in order for him to keep up with ally poise and rupture teams. Heishou Faust is the strongest of the Heishou and obviously also pairs well with this ID. While her bolus effect is not super important, she is undoubtedly the best of all of them, including Honglu for overall damage. She's one of the strongest IDs in the game, and you should want her in any rupture team regardless. She also has Thoracalgia, which is going to be essential for keeping Honglu's poise maintained, which is essential for maxing out Honglu's overall potential. Ryoshu and Rodian are also both great allies for Honglu. If you're going to miss out on any of the Heishou IDs, I think Rodian is probably the one who pairs worst with Honglu, but having all 5 right now at least on the team is pretty great for upping the damage of your entire team due to the leash effect. Family Hierarch candidate Ishmael is also an ID that pairs well with this one, not on the field but as a backup unit in order to trigger battlefield retreat without having to focus on using Honglu's defense skill. He's got much better things to focus on, so ordering your team to have 4 Heishou in the active slots and then 1 in your first backup slot will allow you to retreat when needed, activating the important buffs for all your active Heishous, and get a free skill 3 on the next turn, whilst also giving the newly added Heishou 20 SP for what is very little effort overall. Any future Heishou IDs that get added also need to be considered. We obviously don't know what they do yet, but it matters a whole lot more for this ID than just Rupture ID or Poise ID. Currently, the Heishous suck at generating Lust or Wrath, so other great IDs from a Sin generation point of view are the Devyats, who generate both of those. Their damage is pretty high, and they can eventually retreat independently from the rest of your effects, meaning they can generate a few of those rare resources and then leave to allow the Heishou to do their thing. Other IDs that work well with the Heishous are just other good Rupture IDs. Specifically, Sankt Merceau and W. Corpi Sang are great, since they are great for Rupture count and are fast enough to trigger Deathrite Haste under certain conditions. Merceau, also benefiting from Poise, makes him even better. LCE E.G.O Lantern Yiseng is also great, since him dying is what he wants to do anyways, and this will cause another ally to enter the field, which will trigger that ally to have an additional skill to use on their first turn, as well as giving them extra SP through Honglu's passive effects. And if you can't get good Rupture IDs, you can always just focus on inflicting a lot of various status effects. Tremor and Burn are the easiest to maintain of the main statuses, so any decent Tremor or Burn ID that isn't taking up a Heishou slot is good to bring alongside this ID in order to resolve his effects that rely on enemies having a lot of different effects. Lastly, this team is going to be using a lot of bonus skills. There's a lot of resonance going on here, and so getting additional free skills using the original assist attack on Pequod Ishmael is also a great strategy. You'll generate tons of Sin resources, and as long as you keep her SP in check, you shouldn't notice any negative effects for bringing her. And that's about all I have to say about this Capstone ID. I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of it. It feels like he relies too heavily on having the Heishou IDs next to him, and can't really hold his weight as much as he should be able to without them. He is flashy, but it kinda crosses the line into territory unlike other team leaders, without needing a bunch of their own faction's team members. Honglu can't maintain Rupture count in a Rupture team, and isn't great at utilizing Poise without outside help. With all that said, feel free to add me in Limbus if you want to try him out. I have him at max level with what I believe are his most synergistic E.G.O equipped. Let me know what you think about him in the comments and leave a like and subscribe as it helps me out a lot. Thank you for watching my video, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope to see you again soon.